So I'm going to focus this on something which struck me. I was at a conference actually focused on education last week. Um, Interestingly, hosted by Diane's alma mater, Boston College.
Yeah, that's how my social security number went missing the
Ah,
first time was
okay.
BC, because when I went to college, our social security numbers were our student IDs.
Oh man.
So was ASU, by the way, when I started.
And they said something which I had never thought of, right? Which is how you talk about security to a seventh grader versus an eighth grader versus a ninth grader is different, and same thing in kindergarten versus first grader versus second. So the point is, again, from a head of IT, a director of IT security perspective, your customer, right? With teachers, whether it's the school board, and let's talk about students first, right? I mean, how does that happen? I know, Dana, you had some ideas about gamification, but what has worked in terms of how does that get across? Does it have to go through parents if it's if it's kindergartners, or do you address it through, I don't know? I mean, I hate to use the word TikTok, but do you go where they are already there to engage with them? What are some of the ideas?
So
Diana, do you want to take that one first?
sure, sure. Yeah, so I think, I mean, you're right. Meet them where they are. So, if going out on TikTok, think about the Schoolhouse Rock that in the US that most people, even if you weren't a kid at the time it was running, you probably know things like, oh, I still want to be a Bill. Because, it's just been it got through. It was kind of fun and funky and cartoons on a Saturday morning. So sure, if TikTok is the way to get there, that's wonderful. But also just sort of learn by doing can help quite a bit, because there's this sense, I think, with younger people that with those who are students now, that they've grown up without any privacy, so they just feel really comfortable with that. It's like, yeah, it's fine without privacy. But this is a story from a friend of mine who is actually a higher ed CISO and was taking one of his children to school for their freshman orientation, and the CISO of that institution got up and said, hey kids, I want to remind you all that when you're here, what you post on social media, it's got a long shelf life. And all the kids are going, whatever, and then pictures started going up on the screen behind the CISO. And it was just pictures of kids doing stuff, and so remember, this is freshman orientation. So they were doing keg stands and, obviously drinking and smoking recreationally and all this. Which, as an example, you'd say, well, see, this is the kinds of things that kids post online. Well, no, there were gasps going around the audience, and then there were some angry voices going around. It wasn't just random kids on the internet. It was the incoming freshman class.
Wow.
And their parents now were saying things like, what are you doing at this party where you're doing a keg stand? And so the students had a very different experience of, oh, I'm cool with my privacy, or that was just my Finsta or whatever. Now they've got this. And the CISO said this took me 90 minutes on the weekend to come up with this information. So if you really think that you're cool with all the stuff on the internet and your privacy, how does this feel? And it was very clear as they lived through it that they felt differently than just that, I'm young and it's okay and I don't have privacy. So I think that absolutely meet them where they are. And also, if you can give any kind of people living through it and experiencing it, sometimes we do have a very different reaction when it's us than when we just hear things like, your Facebook profile, or I guess I don't use that, but your Finsta may be around longer than you expect.
That's a fantastic example. I'll have to remember that. I would say, one thing that I've casually encouraged is, from an education perspective, is understanding what their job prospects are going to be too. So I would almost imagine like having an HR manager, like Maricopa County. Look, I'm just going to be upfront. Government has this reputation of being antiquated and old school, and I think there's some truth to that, if I'm being blunt. But even us as an organization, we routinely go through social media as part of our vetting process for hiring. From a security perspective, we darn well do that. We do that above and beyond ourselves, because given the nature of our services, we provide and access to information, everybody's got to be above reproach, right? And so we have had people on paper, all the certs that you could imagine listed out, and then we do a little digging, and yeah, thanks but no thanks, unfortunately. So I think those two examples coupled, I think, send a pretty strong message. You may not care now, but you may care in the future. And the way I look at it is whether, the individual doesn't care about their privacy or not, it's my job to give you the option of whether, if you do care, that we're going to put protections in place. If you don't, then that's your prerogative. But at least it won't be from a lack of, availability from my perspective. So
I would think that students below college level really wouldn't give a hoot about that stuff. And that's what I find difficult. I was really lucky to run into a 12-year-old who was already preaching to her friends that what you post on social media stays there forever, and not to put any pictures of yourself unclothed up there or share with your friends. And I've been cultivating her and trying to get her to go into a college degree program because she's so smart. And she's not even a relative. She's a daughter of a person who cuts my coconut trees here in Maui. But I look for people like that because they're the standouts in the student body at that age.
Mm-hmm.
That's very rare.
Yeah. So these are making me think of some stories, and I'll kind of try to summarize these, but it's about my kids. But when when we think about training, and I think about it every single day for the employees at my company, right? And a common theme that we preach rather is, the information security, everyone's responsibility. There's lots of different flavors of that going around, but it truly is, right? We're relying on these end users to make an informed decision in areas that they're not necessarily the most informed. And, unless you've got your user locked down that they can't even send an email without asking permission, then you've got to give them some kind of awareness. But the story that came to mind is, so think about my kids, right? They're the kids of a CISO. They're 8 and 10 now, or I'm sorry, 10 and 12 now. Whew, don't tell them I said that. But they get a very premium product, I like to think of it, but they get inundated with a live one-on-one personalized security awareness training every time they ask to download a Minecraft mod or a new game or whatever it is on their computers. And the byproduct of that is they're pretty darn aware of what's going on these systems now. And my 12-year-old, the other night at dinner, and this was probably just a couple weeks ago now, he's like, well, Dad, what do you do at work? And I'm like, oh, I teach people about this, or I do this. And he's like, no, like, actually, what do you do? Do you go in? Do you log into a computer? Do you drink coffee, say hi to people? And so I started stepping him through how a lot of my conversations and trainings and presentations are key to my day-to-day and how I keep people aware of these things. And then both of the kids kind of like, wait, why do you have to tell these grown-ups this? Don't they just know this stuff by now? And it was kind of that aha moment. I'm like, well, no, like, you guys know this because we've talked about it over and over and over again. And for some of the employees at my company, they've not heard it as many times as you. They've not had these coachings, and that's what I'm there to do with them. And he's like, all right, well, just so you know, I always double check the links before I click this. And I always look down, that little thing in the browser, I click here and I do this. And it just gives me the smile as the security dad to be like, yeah, you're doing good, and you're going to go a long ways. But I think that ties back into, you guys were talking about these privacy examples, and then this is kind of that operational example of both sides. But I just hope that our generations coming up through this, it does become a commodity. They are not thinking about, or they are thinking about these things rather, and taking them into consideration. And that'll ultimately make our jobs easier as the security leaders in our organizations, because this new group coming up has this better set of knowledge. So key takeaway, training works, however you deliver it, and hopefully it sticks.
And your kids weren't resistant. You're lucky. My kids, they grew up during the era of AOL Instant Messenger, and I used to keep one computer in the house in a common room to protect them from predators before anybody even knew predators existed on the internet. And I used to read over their shoulder, who is XYZ boy and how do you know him in the real world? Mom, you're reading my messages. No, I'm just reading the name of the person who's instant messaging you. And my rule was, if you don't know them in the real world, you do not talk to them online. They called me paranoid. They resisted all their lives. And now they are very secure internet users as adults. And they tell me it's because I was so paranoid. But they used to just make fun of me and resist. And, you know, it was pretty interesting. And they say, Mom, you're so paranoid. I say, yeah, but nothing bad's happened to you, right? They're like, yeah. I go, that's because I'm paranoid, you know, and I use that as an object lesson. And now as adults, they're helping other people with security and things like that too. So it's good. But it is interesting to train them young, and the resistance you get when you try to train them young. In one of my reporting cases, Am I Hot or Not website, where you rank people, and girls are hoping to be found by people who will give them jobs as models and actresses. And there was a rule on there saying, do not post your phone number or your email address. Everything goes through our secure message system. People can message you, but they've got to go through our system. So I did an undercover story where they had actually been posting their street address, their phone numbers, and their personal email addresses inside the HTML codes embedded in their photos. So I was able to call some of these people just because their phone numbers were there. And they were girls saying, yes, I've been stalked before, and they're college girls. One had her dorm address in there, like with other college girls, right? And she says, I don't care, you're old, you're fuddy-duddy, we like to be discovered. I've been stalked before, I don't care, I just want to be discovered. And I'm like, this is scary. So that was about 7 or 8 or 9 years ago. So I don't know if they still think that way, you know, most of the young people in the college sector, or whether they're more savvy now. Maybe you guys have a sense of that since you're working more with college students.
I think it's a mixed bag. I mean, it's funny, you know, anchoring to Daniel's story, it does, like, in communicating with my kids, it's interesting because my oldest daughter, who's going to be 17 soon, used to ask me, like, Dad, what do you do for a living? What do you do for work? Because apparently, like, the kindergarten teacher or whatever was asking everybody to talk about these things. And then she'd come back a few weeks later, like, what do you do for work again? And she'd get like, why do you keep asking this? Because it doesn't make sense and I don't understand it. So that was like my first lesson. And wow, I really need to adapt to the way I communicate. And so now my younger kids, I feel like they actually, you know, are more like Daniel's saying, you know, they are getting a clue. But I really had to evolve my communication. And I know, you know, with the Cyber Center of Excellence that Grand Canyon University operates, that does a lot of the university outreach, it really made a big difference to recruit the more talented cyber students and the people who were more on that level and send them back in to communicate the message than us stodgy old people going in and talking a bunch of technical jargon while everybody sort of nods like they're understanding. And it's amazing, the people who were students just a couple years ago, but also are knowledgeable, can go back and deliver that same message with just an enormous amount more success. But it really is different by age group. And you know, I personally, it's a constant struggle to adapt my message to resonate. And I think it's fascinating.